You only require a single deed to attain success. Imagine if the deed that could be the reason for your salvation is one you hardly even recall. Or, on the other hand, the deed that might lead to your downfall is something you never thought to correct. It could be a moment of kindness you forgot, or a word that caused hurt and slipped your memory. Yet, in the life to come, every single action is given its due weight, and often it is the forgotten ones that tip the balance. Consider this. What is the deed you have done that could be your rescue? And what might be the matter you need to put right before your time runs out? Ada Adhum ibn Asar narrated that when a deceased person awakens in his grave, the very first thing that comes to him are his deeds. These deeds will strike his thigh, awakening him, and will say, "I am your deeds." The person will then say, "Where is my family? Where are my children? Where are my people? Where is everything that Allah had given me?" The deeds will reply, "You have left behind your family, your children, your people, and all that Allah granted you. You will now remain in this grave with me alone." The Messenger of Allah ﷺ famously stated that 3 things follow a person to the grave: his wealth, his family, and his deeds. His wealth and his family return, but his deeds remain with him. This applies to the worldly family, but there is another important detail we learn from the narrations about the Barzakh, the stage of life between death and resurrection. In that realm, people may visit you and you may visit them, but the only companion you truly live with are your deeds. The Prophet ﷺ also informed us that when a person sees his deeds in the grave, he will already recognize just by their appearance what sort of news they bring. You will either be greeted by a beautiful human form or by a hideous one, and that will be according to the way you shaped your deeds in the worldly life. Our deeds are the most important asset we send forward into the Barzakh. They guard us, accompany us, live with us, and in some cases, become the cause of our salvation. When we think about the frightening punishments of the grave and compare them to our own lives and actions, we might feel as though we fall short. Many people feel distanced from the kind of righteous actions that would bring about safety in that realm. Yet, as with every aspect of worship, the key is to focus on the fundamentals. The Prophet ﷺ said, "The most beloved deeds to Allah are those that are done consistently even if they are small." You might not realize it, but every time you perform wudu solely for the pleasure of Allah, those acts could be cleansing your future self from sins that might otherwise have brought about punishment in the grave. When we study the specific punishments of the grave, we notice that they are often connected to habitual sins that accumulate until they become major, but the grave can also serve as a place of purification. For some believers, sparing them from purification in the hereafter. For others, it is a preview of something even more severe to come. Many are familiar with the lengthy narration of Al-Isra wal-Mi'raj, where the Prophet ﷺ describes specific deeds that bring punishment. But there is also a long and beautiful narration that Ibn al-Qayyim advised we should memorize, in which the Prophet ﷺ details specific deeds that save a person in the grave. The Prophet ﷺ said, "I saw a man from my ummah who was extremely thirsty, being turned away from every basin of water. Then the fasting of Ramadan came to him and quenched his thirst." Think about this. When you withhold yourself from water on a scorching day while fasting, how delightful that first sip at iftar feels. Now imagine a sip of water in the Barzakh. After a long and difficult journey into the grave, how much sweeter that would be. The scholars mention a wisdom in this. In Jannah, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Whoever drinks wine in this world will be forbidden from it in the hereafter. But when you restrain yourself from such things here, you are granted them there." Similarly, in the Barzakh, you deprived yourself of water while fasting, and so Allah gives it to you in that realm instead. The Prophet ﷺ continued, "I saw a man from my ummah with darkness beneath him, and the prophets were gathered in circles. Whenever he tried to join a circle, he was turned away. Then his ghusl from the state of janaba came, took him by the hand, and seated him among them. Following the sunnah even in matters of purification carries great blessing. For some, taking ghusl can be uncomfortable whether due to cold weather, lack of warm water, or other hardships. Yet when they immerse themselves in water for the sake of Allah, Allah will immerse them in the company of His prophets. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, I saw a man from my ummah who was surrounded by darkness. Then his Hajj and his Umrah came and brought him into the light. Reflect on Hajj and Hajj. Umrah, there is no other Islamic experience as immersive. At every glance you see reminders of Allah, the Kaaba, Zamzam, Safa, Marwa, Arafah, and pilgrims clothed in white reminding you of your own mortality. It is only fitting that these acts bring light to a person in the darkness of the grave. The Prophet ﷺ also said, I saw a man from my ummah who was trying to protect himself from the flames. Then his charity came and formed a barrier between him and the fire. In this world, your charity shields others from hardship. In the grave, it becomes a shield for you from the fire. On the Day of Judgment, it becomes your shade under the blazing Sunday. Prophet ﷺ continued, I saw a man from my ummah approaching the believers and speaking to them, but they would not respond. Then his Silatul Rahm came and said, this is the one who maintained the sacred family bonds made by Allah, so speak to him. Then the believers greeted him and began to converse with him. How many people neglect their families for the sake of friends? In the Barzakh, the situation is reversed. Those who valued family ties are honored with the companionship of the believers. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, I saw a man from my ummah who was saved from the angels of punishment and joined the angels of mercy because of the good he used to command and the evil he used to forbid. When you enjoin good and forbid evil, you preserve the religion, protect the sunnah, defend the oppressed, and speak against the oppressors. In return, Allah sends angels of mercy to protect you from punishment. The Prophet ﷺ further said, I saw a man from my ummah kneeling before a veil between himself and Allah, and then his husn al-khuluq came and took him by the hand, placing him before Allah. The closest one to the Prophet ﷺ is the one with the best character. The narration continues with more examples of deeds that save a person later in the journey of the hereafter. And here is an important truth. Allah is not only just, He is merciful. He counts the deeds you intended to do but could not, and the deeds you wished to perfect but fell short in, and He multiplies them beyond measure for those who are sincere. An example from today. A cousin in Gaza shared that they have never been permitted to visit Al-Aqsa, though it is near, nor have they been allowed to perform Hajj or Umrah. They cannot even engage in da'wah the way others can, because there is no one to preach to. Yet they are engaged in the greatest da'wah by simply living steadfastly as murabitun, those who guard Islam and refuse to surrender their land. The Prophet ﷺ said, the deeds of every dead person are sealed upon his death, except for the one who stands guard in the way of Allah. His good deeds continue to grow until the Day of Judgment, and he is protected from the trial of the grave. He guarded the frontiers of Islam, so Allah guarded the record of his good deeds. Allah in His mercy can take your smallest righteous act and multiply it enormously if it is sincere. Yet, there may still be matters to correct before you can reach that eternal joy. It could be a small sin you dismissed, a person you harmed without realizing the depth of the harm, or a major sin awaiting the Prophet ﷺ intercession. The effort to purify yourself in the little time you have left in this world is far easier than trying to face these matters once you reach the Barzakh.